Welcome back to the Alt. Thank you for joining me again today. I'm your host, Shapirian. Excited to be back with you today to talk about some football. We're going to talk about some teams that have some injury updates and what I'm doing as a result for one of them. We're going to talk about the 49ers and the Bucks today primarily, and then just a brief look ahead to the Week 8 slate that I think is really good, just to give some kind of preliminary comments on the games ahead when I think of them. It's going to be a good week. It's going to be a good episode that I've prepared for you. But before I get into it, do me a favor. Please take just a second, minimize the video, check and see if you're subscribed to the channel. If you're not, please just click the little button. I would greatly appreciate it. It means more to me than you know. It really helps me out a lot. You can also add into the conversation yourself by leaving a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you, and I answer all my comments. You can also follow me on the Alt, or on most social media at the Alt NFL. I'd love to hear from you either way. Let's get right into it. I didn't get the chance to talk about it really on Monday. We had the huge doubleheader, and that really took up, I think, the entire episode, or Tuesday, I should say, about that. I might have briefly mentioned in the Monday episode Brandon Ayuk, but we know now, Brandon Ayuk, gone for the season, and I just want to say it's not, I don't like looking in people's pockets and things like that. It's not a fun part of the game, in my opinion. I think it takes a lot of the fun out of it in a lot of ways. But I just want to say congrats to you on getting the bag, sir. Because I saw someone point this out, and I think it's very valid to point out and say, like, man, if he hadn't held out and got that contract before the season started, there's a very real chance he's on a 1-year or 2-year prove-it deal going into next season, and that he's never the same again, and that he misses out on the exponentially different generational wealth from what he was already receiving being an NFL player. I think it's very valid. So I'm happy for him in that regard. They did get paid. Obviously very unhappy for him and the 49ers and the 49ers faithful that he got hurt. He's always been one of my favorite receivers in the league. There's a few players that I used to like to say that they are litmus tests for whether the person you're talking about knows ball or not. Back in 2022, before he had really exploded, Debo was the sexy star player compared to Ayuk, and Kittle obviously was as well then. And that's the year they got McCaffrey. I used to say Brandon Ayuk is a great litmus test for whether or not the person you're talking about actually knows what they're talking about. And I still, in a lot of ways, have felt that way. Yes, he's more of a household name now than he's ever been. But Brandon Ayuk, I've always been a big fan of. I'm hoping he comes back at full strength. With that said, it's now time to get in and actually talk about why you probably clicked on this video, why you're here. If you're a 49ers fan or a 49ers hater, I know plenty of both exist. A Bang Bang Niner gang, you guys are very loud and proud and one of the biggest fan bases in the NFL. As a result of your success, you have a lot of haters. I don't know who you are if you're listening to this or if you're just a regular listener of the Alt. With that said, I'm doing it. Finally, after weeks of denying it and weeks of trying to justify not doing it, I'm hitting the panic button on the San Francisco 49ers. Legitimately. Panic. I get that you've now brought yourself to 3-4, which is very different than the 1-2 record that you saw yourself at. But you have to look at things and say, okay, this is piling up, and it's getting consistent to where what I've pointed out myself early in the season appears becoming more and more true, which is, yes, this team is deep. Yes, this team has studs all around it at a lot of important positions too. Yes, Brock Purdy is a very good quarterback. I absolutely think that. If you're here to listen to somebody think or talk about how they don't think Brock Purdy is a good quarterback at all, this is the wrong video, this is the wrong channel for you. I do think Brock Purdy is very good. He's more than fine, especially in that system. But with that said, it's becoming more and more obvious this is just not the year. How often has a team been sub 500 through 7 games with a ton of injuries, and then at the end of the season we're looking back and be like, yep, it was clearly always their year? Never. Look, there's plenty of teams that win it all and we look back and we're like, man, like week 9 or 10, I really didn't see that coming. But it's usually like, oh, they're a game over 500, or they're 2 games over 500 and just haven't really won any super sexy games, but maybe some flashy box score stats from their quarterback, that kind of thing. Top 10 defense, things like that. That's not what's been the case with this Niners team this year. And in a year where I already thought the Lions were going to be the NFC representative in the Super Bowl, it's getting harder and harder to justify defending the San Francisco 49ers in their current state. We're hearing week 11, for Christian McCaffrey. Okay. Brandon Ayuk's done for the season. That's massive, in my opinion. That is huge. I don't even know that I even have to say in my opinion there. That's almost like a factual statement. That's massive that he's gone. And George Kittle has been banged up playing now. That's good. Deebo Samuel was hospitalized for pneumonia. He's now been discharged. Thank God. He seems to be okay then. But obviously he's questionable for the Sunday night game against the Cowboys, who are coming to Santa Clara this weekend. How are they supposed to win football games? They don't have anyone. And I get that no one's going to have sympathy for the San Francisco 49ers if you're not a fan of theirs, okay? No one's going to have sympathy for them because you look and you're like, dang, this roster is deep. And look, they're deep enough to where if they get Jawan Jennings back for this game, like it looks like they might, his hip injury might be subsided to the point of him being able to play this week. I hope it is. I hope we get to see him. And in that case, I feel significantly better about their chances. But you look at the Cowboys, and they've been road warriors. Actually, like they've been struggling at home for the past few seasons, especially this season, 0-3 at home, 3-0 on the road. And then you look at the 49ers. What have they done at home this season besides the Jets game? The Patriots game, I guess, was also at home. That's great. That's the Patriots. That win doesn't really count. I don't know. I'm looking a little too much in the home and away thing, but I just want to kind of reel it back in and talk about how we're not talking enough about what lies ahead for the 49ers, I think, because we've been talking about what's been in the past for them this season, what's already transpired. Say you get through this Cowboys game with no further injuries, no longer more banged up or anything like that. Nothing new as a result of this, okay? And you're back to 500, which, hey, I'm cool with that. I'm more than fine with that happening, but playing the Cowboys off a bye, teams coming off byes tend to win most of the time. It's a massive advantage in this league if you're playing off a bye and the team you're playing isn't, which is usually how it goes. So that's Cowboys this week. After that, you've got the Buccaneers. That game looks significantly different due to the Chris Godwin and Mike Evans injuries that we'll elaborate on a little later in the show. That's great. Got the Seahawks again, and they were able to really throw all over the 49ers in that game despite some kind of sloppy plays from Geno here and there. That was a really good Thursday night game that I really enjoyed. 36-24, I think was the final score in that one. 49ers pulled it out. It's going to be a tough one, though. But look, I can look at it this way and say you've got 4 losses on your schedule already, and you still have the whole division coming up each one more time. You're 1-2 in the division currently, with losses to the Cardinals and the Rams. Okay. You got the Bills. You got the Bears. You're probably better than the Bears, but are you going to beat them? The Bears are winning football games. They've been winning football games. You got the Lions. You're not going to be favored in that game more than likely if things keep going the way it is, but that is literally 2 days before the next year starts. It's going to be tough sledding. You got the Packers. God, tell me they're not more likely to go 9-8 than they are to turn this around and go 11-6. Because that's really what you're looking at for them to guarantee that the division is theirs. And with the way the NFC North is playing, a wild card spot is going to be tough. Let me be fully transparent right now before my words get misconstrued, because it sounds like I'm saying I'm totally out on the San Francisco 49ers. I'm not hitting the panic button, okay? For the sake of this show, I'm not fully out on very many teams at all in the NFL. I'm still somewhat in on like 16 different teams, all right, in terms of being able to get to the playoffs and legitimately have a shot to win a playoff game. But in terms of winning the Super Bowl, those odds seem to be slipping week by week. And it's not something I thought I'd be sitting here saying. In a lot of ways, I have enjoyed watching this current era of the 49ers. I'm a big Kyle Shanahan fan. I like the way he coaches the game. And I like so many players on this roster, right? Talanoa Hufanga, big fan of his. Trent Williams, big fan of his. George Kittle, big fan of his. Brandon Ayuk, I already talked about. Probably my favorite player on this roster. Big fan of his. It just doesn't seem like this in particular is the year. And that roster is getting more and more expensive. And this seems like a lost year. Like seems to be the case for a handful of teams around the league this season, unfortunately for them. So San Francisco, this week, Sunday night. I haven't used this label in a few weeks because, first of all, I don't think the viewers have loved it when I label games as must-wins and things like that. Whatever. Tell me this doesn't feel like a must-win game. You're lucky to have the Bucs next week, which is not something we thought we would say. It still feels like they're going to find a way to put up points just because of the way Baker plays the game, by the way. He's going to get his picks. He's going to put up some points, though. If not for that, it'd be scary hours. You do have a much-needed bye after this game before you get into that stretch. But God, man, it seems like it is going to be tough sledding for the San Francisco 49ers for the entire rest of the season. I'm hitting the panic button on you. I am. Doesn't mean I think you have no chance of winning it all. Doesn't mean I'm for sure saying you're missing the playoffs, because that's not this kind of show, even if it was what I was saying, which is it's not. It just means that I think the road for you to get there is a lot tougher than anybody has thought because of the name value of your brand and the high caliber of your roster and what we've seen from them in the past. 3-4 is 3-4. It just is what it is. It's tough sledding, and I don't know that people are talking about it in the way that you would talk about a 3-4 team typically. Like, you talk about the Bengals who have looked terrible this season. They're 3-4. Are we talking about their Super Bowl chances on a weekly basis right now with the way the shows go? No. And they still have a chance to win the division, the 49ers do. Maybe that's a lot of why the Ravens aren't running away with the NFC West like they are the AFC North. And the Steelers aren't in the NFC West either. I'm just saying, we're not talking about them like a normal 3-4 team. I think right now they're starting to resemble a normal 3-4 team more than they are a legitimate Super Bowl contender. San Francisco, I've been a big believer in you for a long time. I'm not 100% out on you. But we're panicking. We're worried. You need this one against Dallas at home on Sunday Night Football really badly this week. I'd love to see a great game from Brock Purdy to further show why this organization and their fan base should continue to believe in him the way that they have the past few seasons. San Francisco, let's see what you got this week. We're going to move on now to talk about a team that I mentioned a couple times throughout that segment that it stinks to talk about right now because there's so many questions about it and there's a lot of off the field stuff that plays into it as well. Let's talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It looked like for the first quarter they might roll over the Baltimore Ravens on Monday night, and then the MVP versions of both Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry woke up, and before we knew it, it went from 10-0 to 34-10. Some missed opportunities, questionable calls, a doink kick got us to that point, sure. Bottom line is you got whooped regardless of what the score says. It was a 10-point game. But I want to focus first and foremost on the injuries. We're obviously going to talk about Chris Godwin. I'll talk about him more in a sec. I want to first start with Mike Evans, just because we think he's coming back from his injury, roughly around week 11, which I think is coincidentally around the time that we'll get Christian McCaffrey back. I almost conflated the two in my last little bit there, thinking it's the same week that they get Mike Evans back. Different teams, obviously. But even then, can they survive a 3-week stretch without him, knowing that we don't have Chris Godwin there too? It's going to be tough. We're talking about, Millen, Shepard. Who else is wide receiver on that roster? Granted, I don't know a lot of rosters that the average person can name more than the first 4 wide receivers on. That's not a knock on them. I'm just who's he going to throw the ball to? I don't know. I think the Mike Evans injury for them is massive. I don't think that's a surprising statement. If you're a fan of the Bucs or not a fan of the Bucs, I think you obviously know Mike Evans getting hurt is a big deal. But that said, now we're talking about a situation where, okay, yes, the Falcons lost this week, but are they going to be able to pull away now? They have that big matchup together this week that I've been anticipating. It doesn't look like it's going to be quite what we expected, unfortunately. With that said, I think you're going to be okay. Let's calm down. You're getting Mike Evans back. Losing Chris Godwin is a huge blow, undeniably so. But with that said, you can still afford to win enough football games to win the NFC South because it's the NFC South. So we're not panicking yet. But with that said, let's move on to the person that I've been talking about that you've probably heard about by now, Chris Godwin, out for the season with a dislocated ankle. First and foremost, I'm surprised that's a season-ending injury. I massively underestimated what that could mean. I had no clue that would mean season-ending. I had no clue. I heard dislocated ankle. I'm no, it's not great, but thank God it's not that bad. No, it's season-ending. Whoa! I had no idea. And I hate this because It's weird how, like, some players just kind of stick to you a little bit. Like, I talked about how I had Mike Evans in fantasy. I've had Chris Godwin in fantasy before. Chris Godwin is the one I've always preferred as, like, my style of wide receiver. I love the old jump ball wide receivers that Mike Evans is. He's such a deep threat. And he's obviously, in my opinion, and in the opinion of a lot of people, the better wide receiver. Chris Godwin, though, God, I love the way that guy plays. I heard this brought up on Monday night after the game. That was probably his last game as a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. Unless they're able to work something out this offseason. They found a way to keep Mike Evans. They can keep them both. As that roster keeps getting older with less certainty as time moves on in their core 3 or 4 years from now. Probably not. And so Chris Godwin, who was having not really a renaissance year, but certainly a fantastic year, might go out like that. One of the best Tampa Bay Buccaneers, certainly of this generation. That's unfortunate. And you have to look at what that can mean for the team on a lot of levels. You're now 4-3. It's fine. I don't care about 4-3. 4-3 is fine. But you're now in a tough position where you have to survive multiple weeks without both. Okay. Can they get it done? Maybe. For some reason, I'm more inclined to hit the panic button on the 49ers than I am them right now. But listen, if I'm looking at their next 3 games, I think they probably lose all 3 of them, right? I think they lose to the Falcons. I think they lose to the Chiefs in Arrowhead. And then I think the 49ers come to Tampa fresh off their bye week and beat them. All of a sudden, we're talking 4-6. And then they do have a really nice stretch of games to end the year, thankfully for them. They still have the Panthers twice, Raiders, Chargers. You hope Mike Evans is back and able to help them at that point. Whatever. But this one just stinks. And the NFC South was shaping up to be a very fun race to watch, and it still might be, depending on if the Falcons kind of screw around or not, but it's their division to lose at this point, if we're being honest with ourselves here. The Chris Godwin thing. I just hate it. I don't know how to change my tone or my inflections regarding this conversation. The Bucs were yet again a team that I said had earned our trust. We know what to expect from them. And just like that, they're without arguably their 2 best offensive players. Got to find a way to win football games. It would be a fun one this week if they pull it off against Atlanta. Wouldn't that be crazy? I don't know. Bucs fans, let me know. Are you scared as well? If you're a fan of the NFC South or like another team where you just have strong opinions on the Bucs, I'd love to hear from you in the comments as well. But that, my friends, wraps up this episode of The Alt. Thank you if you made it this far. I appreciate you. I love you, and I don't take you for granted. Do me a favor and hit a like on this video if you enjoyed it. Leave a comment down below. Let me know if I missed the mark on something or if you just want to add into the conversation. I'd love to hear from you. With that said, we'll be back tomorrow to talk about Thursday Night Football. Rams-Vikings? Weirdly a fun one involving a 2-win team. Not a lot of 2-win teams in the NFL that could get me excited to watch them play football right now. The Rams are probably the only one. So I'm excited. We'll be back tomorrow with my 3 keys. We'll look a little more into Week 8 and things of that nature. But it's going to be a good time. So with that said, that is it for this one. And I will see you all back here bright and early tomorrow.